Can we really predict the future in our dreams? It sounds kind of ludicrous to say out loud, but eerily accurate dreams are something people have been reporting since we started talking about dreams. They're known as precognitive dreams, and people report having them to this day, and some of them seem pretty tough to chalk up to mere coincidence. We're going to start things off with the Aberfan disaster premonitions. Now, what's really interesting about this case is that this wasn't just a precognitive dream that one person had. There were tons of people who had oddly specific dreams leading up to this disastrous event. For starters though, what is the Aberfan disaster? The Aberfan disaster happened on October 21st, 1966, in the village of Aberfan in Wales. A large coal waste tip sitting above the village collapsed, and a huge landslide engulfed a junior school and several houses. What happened is that over time, waste materials from coal mining, like rocks and dirt, were piled up in this huge mound near the village, and the mound became unstable because of heavy rain, and it eventually gave way. 116 young people and 28 adults lost their lives. But strangely, in the weeks leading up to the disaster, several villagers had pretty foreboding dreams. One young girl named Errol Mae Jones told her parents she'd had a dream where her school had disappeared because, quote, something black had come down all over it. The following day, she died in the accident. Another well-known example was a young boy who'd drawn a picture just a day before the event, depicting figures digging into a hillside with the words, "The End," written at the top. He too would die the following day. The next story is called "I Died, But It Wasn't Me," and was posted to Reddit about a week ago by Repulsive Paint 2202. It goes as follows. The night before last, I had one of the most lucid dreams I've had in a really long time. I was on my way home in this dream, on the end half of the commute, doing about 85 as I always do since I rarely see anyone else on these roads. I'm coming upon a no passing zone, and I see two cars approaching, a white Toyota and close behind a silver Honda. I remember seeing their emblems. I remember clearly feeling my grip on my steering wheel tighten and the AC on my face in my dream. I'm watching them approach, not thinking much either way, when the Honda, who I assumed didn't see me approaching, suddenly pulls out to pass the Toyota. My heart immediately dropped, as I knew I didn't have time to stop what was going to happen. All I could do was say, "Here we go," and close my eyes as their car made contact with mine, at both doing nearly 100, and I woke up in pain immediately upon impact. And the day felt surreal and off, like something was different. This is where things get weird. I was on my way home from my weekly day in office yesterday when I got this sudden urgent clarity on the latter half of my drive, when I'm normally a bit spaced out. I looked up and I see a white Toyota with a silver Honda close behind. I felt like I was going to throw up and instinctively took my foot off the gas and prepared to yank my steering wheel to the right to throw myself onto the shoulder. As I get close to the cars, the Honda pulled out a little, saw me, and juked back behind the Toyota. I passed them without incident, but I still can't shake the feeling that something is off. Is it possible that I watched an alternate version of myself die, where things went slightly different for them than it did me? Why can't I shake this feeling like I'm somehow in the wrong place? Has this happened to anyone before? Did I have a premonition, or did I die and get transferred to another alternate reality? Next on the list, we have a very eerie dream that President Abraham Lincoln had about himself. He had a dream about his own death. In the weeks before his death, Abraham Lincoln had a haunting dream that's become known as one of the most famous examples of a precognitive dream. He told his wife and a small group of friends that in this dream, he saw a funeral in the White House, and when he inquired about the person who had passed away, he was told the president had been killed. He walked up to the East Room, where he saw several guards surrounding his own corpse. And the East Room is exactly where his casket would rest 2 weeks later when John Wilkes Booth took his life. Now, could Abraham Lincoln have been anticipating or fearing something bad happening to him that manifested in a dream? That could definitely explain it, but I don't think that takes away from how poetically unnerving this story is. Next up, we have Carl Jung, who had a number of eerily accurate dreams. Carl Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. He had some fascinating ideas about the human mind, and a large amount of his work was centered around dreams. Jung believed that dreams were like secret messages from your unconscious mind. According to him, dreams weren't just this random barrage of disjointed thoughts that your brain spits out when you're sleeping. He thought they actually carried important information being delivered through the subconscious mind. He had this concept called collective unconscious, which basically means there are some shared ideas and symbols that all humans inherit from our ancestors. He thought that these symbols often pop up in our dreams, helping us make sense of our lives. Jung had a few dreams in early 1914, right before World War I kicked off. In these dreams, he described Europe being thrown into decay and would wake up having this unsettling feeling that something catastrophic was on the way. And literally just a few months after these dreams, the war kicked off. Neuroscientist Dr. Julia Mossbridge has done some pretty fascinating work on precognition and has had some interesting experiences of her own with it. She described one dream she had after she'd gotten divorced. She was looking for an apartment for her and her son. She had a dream that her neighbor, who she hadn't really spoken much to in real life, was renting out a ground floor apartment. The neighbor let Julia pick the colors for the place too, because it was being refurbished. So the next day, Julia woke up from this dream and decided, you know what the heck, I'll just ask her if she knows anyone who's renting out an apartment. And her neighbor told her, I'm renting out a ground floor apartment that's being refurbished. And yes, Julia got to pick the colors, just like in her dream. Next, we have a precognitive dream, or series of dreams, from a holistic therapist from Cambridge named Christia Newman. So the night before Newman was going to a friend's farm to take her family swimming in their outdoor pool, she dreamt about the pool having a tall hedge at one end. Keep in mind, she'd never been to this farm before. In the dream, while her young ones were playing in the water, a large black dog leaped out of the hedge and headed towards her. When she and her family actually visited the friend's farm, she found out that they had Rottweilers, but they were usually kept securely behind locked gates during the day and weren't known to come near the pool. Yeah. But the story doesn't end here. Christia had this dream not just once, but 3 more times before visits to the pool. Each time, nothing too unusual happened, but before the 4th visit, the dream became more intense. Newman could hear screaming, and the sound of the dog snarling was extra uncanny. And the next day, as she stood by the tall hedge during the 4th visit to the pool, one of the Rottweilers jumped out at her, and her family in the pool started screaming, but Newman felt oddly prepared. It was like her dreams had kind of been preparing her mentally for this to happen. She didn't panic. She spoke to the dog calmly, and the dog laid down behind her until the farmer arrived back home. Newman stated, quote, "If I hadn't been pre-warned, I would have reacted with fear and someone would have been seriously injured." Next on the list, we have a disturbing dream that Mark Twain described having that seemed to play out in reality. The dream centered around his brother Henry. The night before Mark and Henry were supposed to travel together on a steamboat called the Pennsylvania, Mark had a dream that he woke up feeling pretty distressed by. Something about it just felt too real, and that was bad because the dream had been pretty dark. In the dream, Mark saw Henry's lifeless body lying in a metal casket dressed in one of his suits. On his chest was a bouquet of white roses with a single red rose at the center. Mark woke up kind of shaken, but after taking a long walk, he settled down a bit and convinced himself it had only been a dream. Mark and Henry were still set to board the Pennsylvania, but a disagreement between Mark and the pilot of the ship, William Brown, led Mark to switch to another boat. Tragically, the Pennsylvania's boiler exploded, causing the death of around 250 passengers, including Mark's brother, Henry. When Mark showed up at his brother's funeral, he suddenly realized he was watching his horrible dream play out before his eyes. Henry's body was exactly as he had dreamed. It was in a metal casket, wearing one of his suits. A woman then came in with a bouquet of white roses, one red in the center, and placed them on Henry's chest. We have a dream from a woman that seemed to foretell the death of President John F. Kennedy. So Kathleen Middleton, a music teacher in London, was part of a study on psychic dreams conducted by psychiatrist John Barker, who was focusing on the strangely accurate premonitions people seem to have right before the Aberfan landslide that we discussed at the top of the video. So she wrote about a dream she'd had right before the disaster, having woken up choking and gasping for air with this uncanny feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Just 1 hour later, the infamous accident took place. Now, it's not uncommon to wake up in a bit of a panic. This one isn't all that hard to explain away, but she later had another dream about the death of Robert Kennedy. In March of 1968, Middleton reported her dreams to the Premonitions Bureau, where Barker was conducting his research. Fast forward to June 4th, 1968, Middleton was oddly anxious and concerned about Kennedy. So she contacted the Premonitions Bureau 3 times that day. And, as we all know, Kennedy died the very next day. Now, this next one is completely nuts, because while most of the dreams on this list are pretty oddly specific, they're still about stuff a human brain could think up, But Niels Bohr, the father of quantum mechanics, dreamt about something completely unknown at the time, the structure of the atom. So back in 1911, Noor was desperately trying to figure out the inner workings of the atom. And one night he went to bed, and in a dream he saw electrons whirling around an atomic nucleus. This dream seemed to spark a breakthrough in his understanding. When he woke up, Bohr was convinced that his dream was going to help him progress in his research. So he headed to his lab to conduct tests, and to his amazement, the results confirmed what he'd seen in his dream. And from that vision, he was able to make a huge breakthrough in uncovering the atomic structure. Finally, we have a story from Reddit user Burnt Toast 82 about 2 strange dreams that they had. The post reads, "I clean houses. Last summer, I had a dream I went to a woman's house and she wanted me specifically to vacuum all these area rugs, flip them over, and clean the undersides of them as well. The next day, I went to a client's house and she asked me to flip all of her area rugs and vacuum the undersides of them. I have never done this for anyone in real life. Weird, but what the hell?" Several months ago, I was reading back through my dream journal, and on January 31st of 2021, I saw that I wrote this down, having completely forgotten about it. Grandma died. She was in a nursing home. My mom and cousin messaged me. That struck me because last summer, my grandma did, in fact, die in a nursing home. And I was regularly messaging and visiting my mom, cousin, and aunt. At the time of that dream, she was in okay health and not in a nursing home. The other one that comes to mind was a dream that I was messaging a friend who in real life I hadn't spoken to for close to a year. In the dream, he told me I should come visit him, but that I should wait until May because he would be tied up with things until then. Then there was a scene where I was walking down the aisle of an airplane looking at the numbers to find my seat. I'm in America and he lives in Europe. Months later, we started talking again, and I did end up going to visit him, and it happened to be in May. I remembered the dream when I was walking through the airplane to find my seat and realized the scene was exactly the same. With all of that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.